The recording begins with static. Then, beneath the noise, a slow, rhythmic pulse begins to emerge. Evenly spaced, deliberate, mechanical. A hydroacoustic engineer stares at the waveform on his monitor. The signal is coming from a seafloor cable that was cut and abandoned in 1962. That cable has not carried a signal in 42 years. Thousands of miles from the nearest city, a small granite island sits alone in the freezing waters of the Bering Sea. There are no trees, no roads, except a single gravel path leading toward a cluster of aging concrete buildings. Near the entrance, a weathered sign still stands. Naval Facility Ravensgate. Restricted. Audio analysts begin comparing the mysterious pulse against archived military recordings. The result is impossible. The signal matches a decommissioned underwater relay protocol used only at this station during the 1960s. No equipment on the island is capable of generating it. In fact, no working system anywhere should still be able to speak that language. While inspecting the lower levels, investigators discover an unmarked steel door. It appears on none of the surviving blueprints. The door is unlocked. Behind it, they find a narrow room lined wall-to-wall with reel-to-reel tape recorders. Dust covers every surface, except for one perfectly clean rectangle on the floor, as if something had been standing there. Not long ago, as the team documents the room, one of the recorders suddenly begins spinning on its own. No one is anywhere near the power switch. The reels rotate too slowly, then speed up, then slow again, almost as though whatever is playing is struggling against something unseen. Then, a voice fills the room. Calm, male, completely unfamiliar. It speaks only one thing: today's date. The investigators immediately check the archive label. According to station records, the tape was recorded in 1979. Small impossibilities begin appearing throughout the station. A hallway light flashes in the exact same pattern, every 11 seconds. Inside an empty office, a calendar is open to a month that has not yet arrived. And on a dusty whiteboard, only a single word remains. Listen. This is the story of Station Kestrel, a classified listening post built to hear the ocean and whatever might be hiding beneath it. What happened here has been reconstructed from recovered field recordings, personal audio logs, and equipment found on the island, weeks after all contact with the research team was lost. In the spring of 2004, a private geophysical company called Meridian Subsea Partners received a federal contract to survey the seafloor along a future trans-Pacific fiber optic route. Ravensgate Island sat directly on that route. Reactivating its abandoned hydrophone network seemed like the fastest and cheapest solution. The expedition was led by Dr. Elena Voss, a 41-year-old marine seismologist from the University of Washington. She was known for trusting evidence above everything else. Her colleagues often described her as someone who refused to believe any anomaly until every ordinary explanation had been exhausted. Joining her was Marcus Bell, 58 years old, a former Navy sonar technician and the only surviving person who had actually worked at Station Kestrel during its military years. He knew the station better than anyone alive. But there was one thing he never spoke about: the day he left. Signal analyst Sam Okafor had spent years interpreting underwater acoustic data for defense contractors. He believed every waveform had a logical explanation. Every strange signal, every anomaly could eventually be understood. Station Kestrel would become the first assignment, where that belief began to fail. Communications specialist Priya Malhotra managed every supply request, every satellite transmission, and every scheduled check-in with the mainland office in Anchorage. She kept meticulous handwritten records of every message. Those notebooks would later become the only reliable timeline of what happened inside the station. The youngest member of the expedition was Tom Reyes, 24 years old, fresh out of technical training. On his very first field assignment, he volunteered to inventory the forgotten storage rooms beneath the station, a task the others were quietly relieved to avoid themselves. The team arrived aboard the supply vessel Halcyon on the morning of June 14th, 2004. Thick fog covered the island, refusing to lift for 3 straight days. The sea remained calm. The crossing was uneventful. Nothing about the journey suggested that almost none of them would ever leave Station Kestrel again. Station Kestrel was built in 1961 as part of a classified underwater surveillance network stretching across the North Pacific. Hidden hydrophone arrays listened for Soviet submarines beneath the ocean for nearly 30 years. When the Cold War ended, the station was shut down. The personnel left. The equipment stayed. The records were sealed. Officially, nothing unusual had ever happened there. The Meridian expedition arrived with everything needed to reactivate the abandoned systems: portable seismographs, modern hydrophones, satellite communications, generators. Marcus Bell carried something different: a worn set of hand-drawn station schematics, kept in secret since his Navy service decades earlier. The first 2 days passed quietly. The station looked strangely untouched. Coffee cups still rested on dusty desks. Logbooks remained open. A wall calendar still displayed 1991. It looked less like an abandoned facility and more like a place where everyone had simply walked away without warning. On the 3rd day, Dr. Elena Voss requested the original architectural blueprints. When they arrived, Sam Okafor compared them to the building itself. One section of the lower level made no sense. A corridor and a room labeled B7 existed inside the station, but appeared on none of the official plans. Marcus Bell stared at the hallway in silence. Finally, he admitted something that unsettled everyone. In 1967, that corridor had ended at a solid concrete wall. He remembered standing there during night watch. He remembered it clearly. The passage had never existed. That same night, Sam's hydrophone system detected the mysterious pulse again, 11 seconds long, coming from a cable officially abandoned in 1962. He reset every system, believing it was interference. The following night, the pulse returned at exactly the same time. During the evening satellite check-in, Priya suddenly stopped speaking. 90 seconds later, the connection resumed. Anchorage insisted the call had never been interrupted. According to their records, Priya had simply fallen silent before continuing her sentence, as though nothing had happened. While cataloging forgotten storage rooms, Tom discovered the mysterious door marked B7. It stood unlocked, even though no key had officially been used since 1991. Inside, spotless tape recorders faced the entrance, arranged almost perfectly, as if waiting for someone to find them. Each recorder carried a handwritten label: watch, listen, return, don't. One tape near the end of the row displayed a date, exactly 3 weeks after the team's arrival. A day that had not happened yet. Dr. Voss ordered everyone to leave the tapes untouched, but later that night, Sam noticed every audio channel, even those switched off, recording the same 11 seconds of static. No equipment failure could explain it. Soon, the security cameras began losing entire seconds of footage, not distorted, not corrupted, simply missing, as though pieces of time had been removed before the recordings stitched themselves back together. Marcus compared his old hand-drawn maps with the newly delivered Navy blueprints. They disagreed in 11 different places. Neither matched the building around them. The impossible corridor existed, even though neither map showed it. Ignoring orders, Sam finally played the oldest tape. At first, it captured only footsteps and someone quietly humming. Marcus immediately recognized the melody. It was a tune he had always hummed alone during night watch, one he had never sung for anyone else. Tom quietly began keeping his own journal. He recorded small inconsistencies: a coffee mug changing desks overnight, a locked door standing open, footprints in the frost, leading somewhere, then returning, without ever turning around, by the 6th day. Tom's journal no longer matched Priya's official log. Priya believed it was June 20th. Tom insisted it was June 21st. Neither remembered losing a day. And for the first time, no one at Station Kestrel could say, with certainty, what day it really was. At exactly 3:14 in the morning, the station's old rotary telephone rang. The line had been disconnected for more than a decade. Marcus Bell was the only person awake. Out of pure instinct, he picked up the receiver. At first, he heard nothing but slow breathing. Then, beneath it, another voice, his own, younger, reciting the original military call sign of Station Kestrel, exactly as he had spoken it in 1967. Dr. Elena Voss refused to accept the impossible. She followed the telephone cable herself, all the way to an old junction box beneath the station. The wires had been physically cut, sealed, disconnected since 1991. There was no path for any signal to travel. She photographed everything, filed the report, and, for reasons she never explained, chose not to tell the rest of the team. Meanwhile, Sam Okafor compared the mysterious underwater pulse against classified Navy recordings Marcus had secretly kept for decades. The match was exact. The signal belonged to a distress transmission sent from Station Kestrel in March of 1979. According to the archive, the crew's rotation had ended normally, but there was something missing. There were no records of where those 6 men went afterward. No transfers, no discharge papers, no families notified. It was as if they had simply disappeared from history. While cataloging tapes inside room B7, Tom Reyes made a discovery he refused to explain. One reel, labeled 1988, contained a voice. His own voice. The problem was impossible. Tom had been born 16 years later. When the others asked what the recording said, he quietly shook his head. Instead, he asked only one question. When does the resupply ship arrive? No one understood why. That night, Sam performed a simple experiment. Standing alone in the corridor outside B7, he clapped his hands. The echo returned. Then the sound of the clap reached his ears. He repeated the test, again and again. Every recording captured the same impossible result. The echo arrived before the sound that created it. Marcus stopped sleeping in his assigned room. Late that evening, he admitted something he had buried for nearly 4 decades. The last thing he clearly remembered from 1967 was a senior officer quietly telling him, "Nobody leaves Kestrel on schedule. They leave early, or they leave late." Marcus never understood what those words meant until now. At the same time, Priya's daily satellite reports became stranger. Anchorage confirmed receiving transmissions before Priya had actually sent them. Every word was identical. Every timestamp appeared correct. Yet somehow, tomorrow's conversations had already arrived yesterday. The operators on the mainland began making their own recordings. None of them wanted to admit what they were beginning to suspect. On the morning of day 9, the wall calendar changed. Since arriving, it had remained frozen in 1991. Now, without anyone touching it, it displayed the correct date. Marcus stared at it for several long seconds, then silently turned it face down. No one tried to stop him. That afternoon, Dr. Elena Voss gathered everyone inside the operations room. For the first time since arriving, she abandoned every conventional explanation. This was no equipment failure, no coincidence, no psychological stress. Something inside Station Kestrel was recording events before they happened, and whatever had created those recordings seemed to be waiting for the team to catch up. Over the next 2 days, Voss and Okafor made a decision they had been avoiding since the beginning. They played every tape inside room B7, one by one, carefully documenting each recording against the Navy's surviving records. At first, nothing seemed connected. Different years, different voices, different teams. Then, a pattern emerged. Every research team assigned to Station Kestrel since 1961 shared the same history. Their records were complete until approximately day 21. After that, personnel files became strangely empty. Transfer orders vanished. Discharge papers were never signed. Entire weeks disappeared from the archive, as though someone had intentionally erased every ending. Marcus quietly did the math. His own rotation in 1967 had also ended. On day 21, for almost 40 years, he had blamed the missing memories on stress. Now, for the first time, he wondered if those memories had never been lost, only removed. The tapes revealed something even more disturbing. They were not predicting the future. Each recording captured ordinary conversations. Almost exactly 3 weeks before those conversations actually happened, every sentence, every pause, every hesitation, word for word. The team slowly realized they had already repeated several of those recordings without ever hearing them first. Then Sam found one final tape. It contained nothing dramatic, only the sound of the Halcyon approaching the island, its engines idling, footsteps crossing the dock, Priya reading the arrival checklist, the exact moment their expedition had begun. Sam looked at the handwritten label. The tape had supposedly been recorded 11 days before the Halcyon had even left port. No one spoke, because by then, no one inside Station Kestrel believed they were investigating an abandoned station anymore. It felt as though the station had been waiting for them. Voss finally accepted what the evidence was showing. The station wasn't predicting the future. It was recording events once, then playing them back before they happened, as if this expedition had already taken place. Marcus offered an even darker theory. He believed no team had ever truly left Station Kestrel. The missing personnel files didn't mean death. They meant the story simply stopped. On day 14, Tom disappeared. For 4 hours, no one could find him. They eventually discovered him inside room B7. He was sitting silently in front of the future-dated tape. The factory seal was still intact. The reels had never moved. Yet Tom insisted he had already heard it. He refused to repeat what was on the recording. Voss blamed stress and isolation in her report. But privately, she no longer believed that explanation. The next morning, Priya found several outgoing satellite messages she had no memory of sending. Anchorage confirmed receiving every transmission. Hours later, the team repeated those same conversations almost word for word. Trying to break the pattern, Sam performed an experiment. He spoke a completely meaningless sentence into the hydrophone. Something impossible. Something that could never happen by accident. 3 hours later, a new tape appeared in room B7. None of them remembered placing it there. It carried a date from the previous week. When Sam pressed play, he heard his own voice repeating the exact sentence. Marcus looked at the recorder. Maybe the station wasn't recording time incorrectly. Maybe it was correcting it. Every attempt to change the future simply became part of an earlier recording. Voss dismissed the idea, but that night, she reviewed every timestamp again, every recording, every transmission. By sunrise, she couldn't prove Marcus was wrong. For the first time, she switched on a portable recorder and began documenting her own thoughts, just in case someone else would hear them one day. That night, Voss recorded her first personal audio log. She said only one sentence. If someone finds this, don't trust the timestamps. The next morning, the team requested immediate evacuation. The satellite phone connected. Priya spoke clearly, but the voice answering wasn't Anchorage. It was Priya herself, repeating a transmission she had recorded days earlier. They switched to the backup radio. Every frequency carried the same 11-second pulse. With each attempt, it became slightly louder, as if something beneath the ocean had noticed they were listening. Marcus finally remembered the last conversation from 1967. A fellow technician had looked at him and quietly said, "This station isn't haunted by people. It's haunted by a day, and the day isn't finished yet." Voss searched old personnel files again. One detail had been overlooked. Every team that supposedly left Kestrel eventually reappeared elsewhere. But every survivor shared the same note. No memory of the final weeks of service. They hadn't died. Their ending had simply been erased. Tom broke the silence. What happens to the memories that disappear? No one answered. Priya quietly wrote the question into her notebook, then underlined it twice. According to Priya's original log, it was now day 19. Only 2 days remained before every previous expedition vanished from the records. Nobody mentioned it. Everyone already knew. That night, they returned to room B7. The future-dated tape was no longer sealed. The factory plastic had been torn open. Nearly 40 minutes of tape had already played. No one admitted touching it. No one even remembered opening the room. Communication with Anchorage failed completely. The satellite terminal showed a perfect signal, but every speaker played only the rhythmic pulse from the seafloor cable. It no longer sounded random. It repeated in groups of 3, almost like a countdown. Okafor switched to the Halcyon's emergency frequency. A voice answered immediately. It was the captain. He sounded confused. He insisted the evacuation had already happened. According to him, all 5 researchers were already aboard the ship heading back to Anchorage, 5 days before the rescue was even scheduled. Priya noticed her handwriting changing. The neat letters in her communication log slowly became unfamiliar, looping, identical to the writing on every tape inside room B7. She couldn't remember writing the last page. She closed the notebook and never opened it again. Soon, the team couldn't even agree on the date. Bell was certain it was day 20. Voss insisted it was day 21. Sam checked the metadata on his camera. The same photograph carried 2 different dates. Neither could be trusted. Tom barely spoke anymore. He spent hours inside room B7, listening to tapes no one else could hear. When Voss finally brought him outside, he looked at her and quietly said, "It already told me how it ends." The corridor leading to B7 also began changing. It had always been 11 paces long. Now each walk took a different amount of time. Sometimes 20 seconds, sometimes 40. The hallway looked exactly the same, only the distance refused to stay constant. That night, every light inside Station Kestrel began flickering together, not randomly, always in the same 11-second rhythm. The building itself seemed to be breathing. Voss tried leaving the island alone. She walked toward the dock for nearly 20 minutes. When the fog finally cleared, she was standing in front of the station again, exactly where she had started. A few hours later, Priya attempted the opposite direction. She headed toward the northern cliffs. She returned to the same front door. Her boots were soaked with seawater. She had no memory of touching the ocean. Bell refused to try escaping. He finally remembered what happened in 1967. 2 technicians had walked toward the dock on day 21. He watched them disappear into the fog. They never came back. And somehow, no one searched for them. That night, Okafor's hydrophone system captured something new. Hidden beneath the familiar pulse were human voices, dozens of them, speaking over one another, fragments of conversations the team had not yet had. Shortly after midnight, Tom disappeared. No one saw him leave. The door to room B7 stood open. Inside, every tape recorder was running, each at a different speed. The room echoed with dozens of recordings playing at once. But Tom was gone. Voss searched every corner of B7. There was no sign of him. Only a single unlabeled tape resting on the nearest recorder. Its casing was still warm, as if it had just been recorded. She pressed play. Tom's voice filled the room. Calm, steady. "I understand now. It isn't a monster. It isn't a ghost. It's just a day that refuses to end. And the only mercy it gives you is forgetting." The recording ended. For 11 more seconds, only one sound remained. A heavy steel door closed somewhere deeper inside B7, beyond a corridor that did not exist on any blueprint. The radio came alive one last time. It was the captain of the Halcyon. He calmly confirmed that the evacuation had already been completed. Every member of the expedition was safely aboard. The problem was simple. The rescue ship had not arrived yet. No one argued anymore. They had stopped trying to explain the impossible. As they stood in the operations room, the wall calendar slowly flipped by itself, page after page, until it stopped. The year Station Kestrel officially closed. That night, Voss recorded her final audio log. Her voice was calm. "If anyone finds this, don't come looking for us." Then she picked up her flashlight and walked toward room B7. The recording ended. No one ever heard from the team again. When the Halcyon reached Ravensgate on its scheduled arrival, the generators were still running. The lights were on. Meals were left unfinished. Computers were still powered. But the station was empty. Every member of the expedition had vanished. Search teams spent 11 days combing the island. They found notebooks, equipment, personal belongings, Voss's unfinished report, but not a single body, not a single footprint leading away. Nothing. Within months, Meridian canceled the project. The company quietly disappeared. The Navy refused to answer questions. Most of the recovered evidence was sealed. Officially, Station Kestrel became another unsolved disappearance. Years later, boxes of recovered equipment arrived at a small maritime archive. A junior archivist discovered one recorder that had never been cataloged. Inside a single, unlabeled tape. He played it. A woman's voice spoke. It was Dr. Elena Voss. She described the archivist, the room, the desk, even the exact moment he pressed play. Then she gave him one warning. Don't finish cataloging the tapes. And if you find one dated 3 weeks from today, don't listen to it early. The archivist dismissed the recording as a prank. He sealed the tape and returned it to storage. 3 weeks later, another evidence box arrived. Inside was a factory-sealed reel labeled with that day's date. The following Monday, the archivist never returned to work. No one has seen him since.